Title: The Whispering Waters. Chapter 1: A Reluctant Journey. The sound of rushing water was a familiar, yet unsettling lullaby as Aaron drove toward the Shenandoah River. He could hear it calling to him, beckoning him closer like a siren enticing a sailor to his doom. The old truck rattled as he navigated the winding roads, the trees on either side looming like dark sentinels, their branches twisting toward the sky like gnarled fingers. Aaron's heart raced with every turn, the weight of his past pressing down upon him. It had been years since he'd last visited a body of water. The mere thought of it filled him with a deep-seated dread, a haunting echo of the tragedy that had scarred his childhood. The memory of his sister, Emily, flashed through his mind, her laughter, bright and full of life, abruptly replaced by silence that had swallowed him whole. The guilt, a living entity, curled around his heart, squeezing tighter with every mile he drove. He glanced at the passenger seat, where Sam and Tara chatted animatedly, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. They were excited, eager for adventure, but all he felt was a gnawing anxiety that threatened to consume him. Why had he agreed to this? He should have known better than to put himself in a situation that would force him to confront the waters he feared most. "You okay, man?" Sam asked, breaking through Aaron's spiraling thoughts. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," Aaron replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's been a long week." "Don't worry. You'll have fun once we hit the water," Tara chimed in, her bright smile a stark contrast to the shadows dancing in Aaron's mind. "It'll be great, just like old times." Old times. The words echoed through him like a death knell. He remembered the last time they had all been together, the laughter ringing out against the backdrop of the river before everything changed in an instant. As they approached the riverbank, the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and the undercurrent of something more sinister. It tugged at his senses, whispering promises of dread and despair. The old man, Mr. Hargrove, had warned him about the river, about the legends that clung to its waters like algae, tales of spirits lost beneath the surface, waiting to drag the living into the depths. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the unease. They were just stories, he told himself, nothing more than the imaginative ramblings of an old man. But as they pulled into the parking area and unloaded their gear, he couldn't shake the feeling that the river was alive, watching them with a hungry gaze. "Come on, Slowpoke," Tara called, laughing as she bounded toward the river's edge. "You're going to miss the fun." With a deep breath, Aaron followed, his feet heavy as he approached the water. The river sparkled under the sun, deceptively beautiful, but he could feel its darkness lurking just beneath the surface. The rush of the current seemed to whisper secrets in a language he couldn't understand, coaxing him to come closer. They settled on the bank, tossing their tubes into the water. Laughter erupted as they prepared to float downstream, but all Aaron could hear was the echo of his sister's laughter, an echo that twisted into a haunting refrain. "Are you ready?" Sam asked, grinning widely. "You can't let fear hold you back. Just let it go and enjoy the ride." Aaron forced a smile, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Let it go. The phrase haunted him, a reminder of everything he had tried to bury. He watched as Tara climbed into her tube, her carefree laughter filling the air, and for a moment he felt the warmth of nostalgia wrap around him, momentarily dulling the fear. But as they pushed off into the current, a chill raced through him. The water flowed swiftly, pulling them along, but Aaron felt tethered to the past, the shadows of his memories swirling just below the surface. Each splash of the water against his skin sent ripples of anxiety coursing through him. As they floated downstream, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an orange hue across the sky that felt ominously beautiful. The laughter of his friends faded into the background as the trees closed in around them, creating an oppressive canopy that blocked out the last of the light. The river twisted, and as the current pulled them deeper into the wilderness, Aaron felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air grew heavier, the shadows lengthening around them. The whispers returned, soft at first, then rising to a frenzied pitch, echoing through the trees and dancing along the water's surface. "Help! Me!" He shook his head, trying to dismiss the voice, but the fear gnawed at him, clawing at his sanity. He glanced at Sam and Tara, who were engrossed in their own conversations. blissfully unaware of the growing darkness surrounding them. "Are you guys hearing that?" Aaron asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hear what?" Tara replied, brow furrowing in confusion. "It's nothing," he mumbled, but the whispers grew louder, wrapping around him like a cold embrace. They called to him, beckoning him deeper into the river's heart, where the shadows gathered like a storm ready to unleash its fury. The water surged around them, swift and unyielding, as the current began to pull them toward a darker section of the river, where the trees loomed larger, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. Panic surged through him as he fought against the tide, but it was too strong. The water tugged him forward, dragging him further into the unknown. "Help! Us!" The voice echoed louder now, a chorus of lost souls rising from the depths of the river, desperate and mournful. Aaron felt his heart race, fear clawing at his throat as he realized the truth. The river was alive, and it craved something from him. "Guys, we need to get back!" he shouted, his voice filled with urgency, but Sam and Tara only laughed, oblivious to the danger. With every moment, the whispers grew, drowning out the sounds of laughter, filling his mind with visions of waterlogged bodies, shadows pulled beneath the surface, forever trapped in the river's cold embrace. He was losing them, losing himself. The grip of the river tightened, and he felt himself slipping beneath the waves, darkness closing in around him. As the last remnants of light faded, Aaron realized that he was not just fighting against the current. He was battling the very shadows of his past. The river was a reflection of his guilt, a dark mirror that held the weight of everything he had tried to forget. "I won't let you take me," he screamed into the night, but the river only roared back, the voices rising in a cacophony of despair. The journey had only just begun, and the river was determined to reclaim him. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. The river gleamed under the dim light of the fading sun, its surface smooth and inviting, but Aaron felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. As the last rays of daylight slipped beneath the horizon, shadows crept from the trees, wrapping around him like cold fingers. The air grew thick with humidity, clinging to his skin, amplifying the disquiet brewing within him. The sounds of laughter from Sam and Tara faded into the distance, replaced by the whispering current that seemed to beckon him closer. Aaron stood at the water's edge, memories crashing over him like waves. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves flooded his senses, pulling him back to that fateful day, an afternoon that had started with promise and ended in horror. The laughter of children playing on the banks of the river, the playful splashes of water, all faded into a dark abyss that still haunted him. "Are you coming? Or are you just going to stand there like a statue?" Sam called from the tube, his carefree demeanor oblivious to the tension coiling in Aaron's chest. "I'll be right there," Aaron replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on his lips. He stepped forward, but the ground beneath him felt unsteady, as if the very earth were shifting to remind him of the past. As he stepped into the cool water, a shiver ran down his spine. The river flowed around him, the current tugging at his legs with an almost sentient force. It felt alive, a heartbeat echoing through the waters, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching him, waiting. With each stroke, memories swirled in his mind, vivid and unrelenting. He could see Emily's face, bright and joyful, her laughter ringing like chimes in the breeze. They had spent countless summers splashing in the water, carefree and wild, until that day when the laughter turned to screams. The moment was forever etched in his memory, a permanent reminder of his failure. "You're not going to let that happen again, are you?" The voice echoed in his mind, a dark reminder of the night his world had crumbled. The river had become a malevolent force, a reminder of everything he had lost. He could still hear the distant sounds of her laughter intermingled with her cries for help. Suddenly, the current shifted, pulling him deeper into the river's embrace. Panic surged within him, and he kicked against the water, desperate to regain control. He glanced back at Sam and Tara, who were engrossed in their own merriment, blissfully unaware of the turmoil raging inside him. The sun dipped lower, and shadows elongated, twisting around him like tendrils of smoke. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and the playful splashes of water began to morph into something darker. The laughter faded, replaced by faint whispers that seemed to come from the depths of the river. "Help us! Help us!" The haunting call sent chills coursing through Aaron's veins. His heart raced as he looked around, searching for the source of the voice, but there was nothing. Only the rushing water and the creeping darkness. The whispers intensified, wrapping around him like a shroud, and he felt himself being pulled deeper into the abyss. "Hey, are you okay?" Tara called, her voice piercing through the fog of his thoughts. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Aaron replied, forcing the words through clenched teeth. But inside, he was spiraling, trapped in a whirlwind of fear and regret. The shadows danced at the edge of his vision, tantalizing him with glimpses of memories long buried. As the sun sank lower, the darkness deepened. The atmosphere grew heavy, thick with the weight of unspoken truths and hidden fears. Aaron's grip tightened around the tube as he floated, trying to focus on the present, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "You abandoned us." He felt the chill of despair wrap around him, suffocating in its intensity. He shut his eyes tight, willing the voices to fade, but they clung to him, dragging him back to that terrible moment. He could see it clearly now. Emily, reaching for him, her small hand grasping at the air as she slipped beneath the surface, the water swallowing her whole. "No, I can't," he shouted into the darkness, the words tumbling from his lips in a desperate plea. "I didn't mean to let you go." But the river had no compassion. The whispers turned to screams, filling the air with a cacophony of grief. "Help us! You left us!" The sound reverberated through him, an echo of the guilt that had haunted him for years. Suddenly, the current shifted violently, pulling him under with a force that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Panic surged as the water enveloped him, darkness closing in around him. He fought against it, struggling to surface, but the river was relentless, dragging him deeper into its depths. In those suffocating moments beneath the surface, time seemed to stretch and distort. The world around him warped into a blur of shadows and light, the whispers melding into a haunting melody that echoed his pain. "You let her drown. You are not worthy." Just as he thought he would drown in despair, he broke the surface with a gasp, the night air hitting him like a jolt of electricity. The water shimmered under the moonlight, revealing the faces of those who had been lost to the river, ghostly figures peering at him from the depths, their expressions twisted in anguish. He frantically looked around, heart pounding in his chest. Sam and Tara were still unaware of the horror unfolding beneath the surface, their laughter ringing hollow against the backdrop of his spiraling fear. The darkness around him began to close in again, whispering promises of retribution, of revenge for the lives lost to the waters. "Stop!" he cried out, desperation tinging his voice. "I didn't mean to. I couldn't save her." But the shadows only grew stronger, the whispers rising to a deafening roar. Suddenly, everything went quiet. The water stilled, and a heavy silence descended, wrapping around him like a shroud. Then, the figure of a girl appeared before him. Emily, her face illuminated by the moonlight, ethereal and haunting. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, yet there was a warmth, a familiarity that made his heart ache. "Aaron," she said softly, her voice like a gentle breeze. "You need to forgive yourself. I'm here, but you can't let the darkness win." He stared at her, disbelief washing over him. Emily. But as quickly as she appeared, she began to fade, her form blurring in the moonlight. "You must face it," she whispered, the echo of her voice mingling with the shadows. "You can't let it take you." As she disappeared into the night, the darkness swirled around him once more, growing thicker and more malevolent. Aaron realized that the river wasn't just a physical entity, it was a manifestation of his guilt, a living force that fed off his fear and regret. With a surge of determination, he knew what he had to do. He couldn't let the river claim him or his memories of Emily. He had to confront the shadows that threatened to engulf him. As he paddled back toward the bank, Aaron steeled himself for the battle ahead. He had to face the truth that lay beneath the surface, not just about the river, but about himself. The journey had only just begun, but he was ready to fight against the darkness that had haunted him for far too long. Chapter 3. The Old Man's Warning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Shenandoah River, Aaron felt a sense of foreboding settle in his chest. The vibrant colors of twilight bled into a deep indigo, wrapping the world in an unsettling blanket of darkness. The air was thick with humidity, clinging to his skin, and the river's gentle murmurs seemed to grow more ominous as the light faded. "Let's find a spot to set up camp before it gets too dark," Tara called out cheerfully, her laughter ringing like a chime. But Aaron felt a shiver run down his spine. He glanced back at the water, feeling the familiar pull of anxiety grip him. What secrets lay beneath its surface? They paddled their tubes toward the bank, where the trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches twisted and gnarled, reaching toward the heavens as if trying to escape the darkness below. The serenity of the river was deceptive, and Aaron could feel the tension in the air thickening as they pulled ashore. It was a feeling he couldn't shake, a gnawing sense that they were not alone. As they began to unpack their gear, Aaron noticed an old man standing at the edge of the river, his figure silhouetted against the fading light. He was hunched over, with a long grey beard and clothes that looked as if they had seen better days. The old man's eyes glinted like obsidian as they locked onto Aaron's, and a chill settled in the pit of his stomach. "Don't go in the water, boy," the man croaked, his voice raspy and low, as if it had been dragged through gravel. "Not after dark. The river's hungry when the sun sets." Aaron felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to dismiss the unease creeping through him. "The river wraith," the old man continued, undeterred by Aaron's skepticism. "It comes alive in the darkness, feeding off the souls of those who've lost their way. You don't want to be caught in its grasp." Sam laughed, shaking his head dismissively. "Come on, man. This is just some old folklore. We're here to have fun, not listen to ghost stories." But the old man's eyes bore into Aaron's, and for a moment he felt as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "You don't understand. The river is not just water, it's a gateway to something dark and ancient. You must heed my warning. Many have disappeared into those waters, lost to the shadows." Tara, who had been quietly listening, shifted uncomfortably. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Have people really gone missing?" The old man nodded, his expression grave. "There are stories, my dear. Many souls lost, but they can still be heard in the water. If you listen closely, you can hear their cries. It's a warning." The laughter from earlier faded, and the air grew heavier with dread. Aaron felt the shadows closing in, the trees looming larger, as if leaning closer to overhear the conversation. He could almost hear the river whispering, its voice soft yet insistent, beckoning him to come closer. "Thank you for the warning, but we're just here for a little fun," Sam said, dismissing the old man as he turned away, clearly unimpressed. Tara followed, her brow furrowed in concern. Aaron hesitated, torn between the comfort of his friends and the chilling instinct that clawed at him. He felt an inexplicable urge to remain, to hear more, but the shadows seemed to encroach, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. "Be careful, boy," the old man said, his voice low and firm. "The river may seem calm, but it holds darkness in its depths. Remember, it's not just a river, it's a living thing. If you disrespect it, it will reclaim what it believes is rightfully its." Aaron nodded, unable to shake the feeling that something profound lay beneath the old man's words. But he turned away, joining Sam and Tara as they set up their camp. The fire crackled to life, casting flickering shadows that danced along the ground, but the warmth of the flames couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in his bones. As night fell, the woods around them transformed into a living entity, a maze of darkness punctuated by the soft glow of the campfire. The sounds of the river grew louder, its whispers rising in a haunting melody that wound its way through the trees. "We should do some night swimming," Sam suggested, grinning as he roasted a marshmallow. "What do you say, Aaron? You can't be scared of the water." Aaron forced a laugh, but inside, a storm brewed. The thought of stepping into the river after dark filled him with dread. "Maybe we should just stick to tubing in the morning," he said, trying to sound casual. Tara, sensing his unease, gave him a supportive smile. "It's okay to be cautious, Aaron. We can wait until morning if you want." The tension hung heavy in the air as the three of them settled into the warmth of the fire, but the darkness outside felt alive, a hungry void waiting to consume them. The stories the old man had shared lingered in Aaron's mind, swirling like the smoke from the fire, blending into the night. As the hours passed, The woods grew eerily quiet. The chirping of crickets faded, and the rustling of leaves stilled. It was as if the very world had held its breath, anticipating something unspeakable. Aaron's heart raced as he looked around, the shadows stretching, creeping closer to the light of the fire, and then he heard it, a soft murmur, like whispers dancing on the wind. "Help us!" The sound sent a jolt of fear through him, and he sat up straight, scanning the darkness around them. Sam and Tara remained oblivious, lost in their own laughter, but Aaron felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. The whispers grew louder, rising and falling like a mournful tide, pulling at his sanity. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Hear what?" Sam replied, brow furrowed. "It's nothing," Tara added, trying to reassure him, but Aaron could feel the unease creeping in, tightening its grip around his heart. With a deep breath, he forced himself to calm down, dismissing the sounds as figments of his imagination. But deep down, a nagging doubt lingered, a primal instinct that warned him to stay alert. As the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced along the trees, Aaron's thoughts drifted back to the old man. What if the stories were true? What if the river did hold darkness within its depths? The more he pondered, the more the darkness seemed to wrap around him, suffocating and cold. He glanced at the river, its surface shimmering under the pale moonlight, and for a fleeting moment, he could have sworn he saw something move just beneath the water, a dark shape swirling in the depths, watching him. He shook his head, trying to dispel the thought, but the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. The water seemed to pulse, alive with secrets it had no intention of sharing. What lay beneath the surface? As he stared into the river's depths, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Join us! You cannot escape!" A shiver ran down his spine, and Aaron abruptly stood, the firelight flickering wildly as he stepped away from the group. "I think I need some air," he muttered, retreating from the warmth of the flames and into the chilling embrace of the night. The darkness enveloped him, and he felt the weight of the woods pressing in, shadows moving in ways that defied logic. As he approached the water's edge, the whispers grew louder, almost pleading now. Suddenly, he stumbled, nearly losing his footing as the ground shifted beneath him. He caught himself, breathing heavily, the whispers intensifying as the river surged forward, rippling ominously. Aaron closed his eyes, trying to silence the cacophony in his head, but the voice was relentless. "You cannot hide from us." Desperation surged within him. "Leave me alone," he shouted into the darkness, but his voice was swallowed by the night, and in that moment, he realized he stood at the precipice of something far greater than himself. The river had awakened, and its hunger was insatiable. The stories weren't just tales to frighten children. They were warnings, haunting truths that echoed through time. With dread pooling in his gut, Aaron turned back toward the camp, but the shadows behind him seemed to swirl, dark tendrils stretching toward him like fingers reaching out from the depths of despair. He could feel the pull of the river, its darkness whispering promises of solace. If only he would give in, but he wouldn't let it take him. Not now, not ever. Chapter 4. The Descent into Darkness. The sun had fully set by the time Aaron and his friends pushed off from the riverbank, the darkness settling around them like a heavy cloak. As they floated down the Shenandoah River, the air grew cooler, the light fading to a dim twilight that shrouded everything in an unsettling veil. The sounds of nature that had once seemed so vibrant, now transformed into a haunting symphony of creaking branches and rustling leaves, their whispers echoing like a warning in the night. Aaron clutched the sides of his tube, anxiety gnawing at him. The river flowed steadily, but it felt alive beneath him, the current pulling at him with a strength that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Memories of the old man's warning clawed at the edges of his mind, growing louder with each passing moment. The river wraith. The name sent chills down his spine, an unshakable fear that clawed at him, begging him to turn back. "Look at that!" Sam exclaimed, his voice bright with excitement, pulling Aaron's attention away from his spiraling thoughts. He pointed toward a cluster of trees that loomed over the river, their twisted branches resembling skeletal hands clawing at the sky. "This place is amazing." "Yeah, amazing," Aaron echoed, forcing a smile as he gazed at the trees, their shadows stretching like dark fingers across the water. Amazing and terrifying, he thought, but he bit his tongue, unwilling to share his fears with his friends. As they drifted further downstream, the moon began to rise, casting an eerie glow over the water. The reflections shimmered like liquid silver, mesmerizing, yet foreboding. Aaron felt the shadows deepen around them, encroaching like a dark fog, and a chill settled in his bones. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, hidden just below the surface. Suddenly, Tara let out a playful scream as she splashed water towards Sam. "Come on, lighten up. This is supposed to be fun." Her laughter rang out, bright and clear, cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. But Aaron felt a knot of dread twist tighter in his stomach. He could almost hear the river whispering, a low hum of voices beneath the surface, calling out to him with familiar tones. "Help us! Help us!" The sound sent a wave of panic crashing over him, and he fought to steady his breath. "Guys," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "do you hear that?" "Hear what?" Sam replied, glancing over with a puzzled look. "The whispers. In the water." Aaron's heart raced as he searched their faces for understanding, but he found only confusion. Tara rolled her eyes. "You're just hearing things, Aaron. Relax. It's just the river." But as the laughter faded and the darkness deepened, the whispers grew louder, clawing at the edges of his sanity. "Join us." The current shifted unexpectedly, pulling him closer to the edge of the riverbank, where the trees loomed like ominous giants. The shadows seemed to stretch toward him, pulling him into their depths. He could almost feel their breath, cold and damp, as they brushed against his skin. "I think we should head back," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper, but the words were lost in the rush of the river. "Not a chance," Sam shouted, grinning as he splashed water playfully at him. "We're just getting started. It's a beautiful night." Aaron's heart pounded in his chest, the fear rising within him like a tide. As the darkness closed in, the air grew thick with a sense of impending doom. What if the river really was alive? What if the legends were true? Suddenly, the water surged violently, sending Aaron tumbling from his tube. Panic surged through him as he flailed, the current pulling him under, the darkness swallowing him whole. He fought against the icy grip of the river, desperately clawing for the surface, but the shadows closed in around him, enveloping him in a suffocating embrace. Just when he thought he would drown, he burst through the surface, gasping for air. He looked around frantically, his heart racing as the water swirled ominously around him. Sam and Tara were laughing, completely unaware of the chaos that had unfolded. "Aaron, what happened?" Tara called out, concern etched across her face. I don't know. The water pulled me under," he shouted, his voice hoarse with panic. But as he spoke, the whispers returned, louder now, wrapping around him like a chilling caress. "You let them down." With a surge of adrenaline, he paddled back to his tube, heart racing. The river felt different now, charged with a malevolent energy that sent chills racing down his spine. He could feel the shadows gathering around him, a palpable presence lurking just beneath the surface. As they continued down the river, the laughter faded into a tense silence, the tension thickening with every passing moment. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a ghostly glow over the water, illuminating the shapes lurking just beneath the surface. Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that the river was watching him, waiting for the moment when he would succumb to his fears. The shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around him, whispering secrets that sent chills racing through his veins. "Help us! Help us!" "Guys," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I think we should turn back." "What, and miss out on the fun?" Sam laughed, but the sound was hollow, ringing with unease. "No, seriously, I don't feel right about this," Aaron insisted, his voice rising with desperation. But just as he spoke, the water surged violently again, the current shifting unexpectedly, as if the river itself were responding to his fear. Aaron clutched the sides of his tube, panic flooding through him as he felt the pull of the current, the darkness swirling around him like a storm. "Whoa!" Tara yelped, nearly tipping over as the water churned beneath them. "What's going on?" Before anyone could respond, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, filling the air with a cacophony of desperate cries. "Help us! Help us!" The sound clawed at Aaron's mind, the anguish of lost souls rising from the depths. The trees surrounding them twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands, the shadows elongating to envelop them completely. Aaron felt the darkness closing in, a suffocating presence that threatened to drag him down into the depths of despair. He looked around, heart pounding in his chest, the river now a swirling vortex of chaos and shadows. Sam and Tara were frozen, eyes wide with fear as they began to comprehend the malevolence of the river. "Turn back! We need to get out of here!" Aaron shouted, his voice rising above the din, but the current continued to pull them deeper, the darkness swirling around them like a storm. As the whispers grew louder, the shadows danced in his periphery, taunting him with promises of freedom if he would just give in. The fear clawed at him, but within that fear, something else stirred. A flicker of determination ignited by the memories of Emily, of the bond they had shared. "I won't let you take me," he shouted, fighting against the pull of the river. The darkness responded with a violent surge, crashing against him, but he dug his hands into the sides of the tube, holding on for dear life. Just then, a flash of movement caught his eye. In the darkness, he thought he saw a figure, a girl's silhouette, her hair floating like seaweed in the current. "Help us!" The voice echoed in his mind, and for a brief moment, he thought he recognized her. "Emily!" he cried out. But the darkness swallowed the name, leaving nothing but despair in its wake. With every ounce of strength he could muster, he paddled against the current, fighting the shadows that clawed at him. "I'm coming!" he shouted, not just to the figure, but to himself, reminding himself that he could not succumb to the river's darkness. As he kicked and paddled, he could feel the river shifting, the shadows beginning to recoil as if sensing his resolve. The whispers turned to a wailing cry, filled with anger and sorrow echoing through the night. "Fight it!" Tara yelled, snapping him back to reality. "We can't give in!" The three of them began to paddle harder, the darkness swirling around them in a desperate attempt to pull them under. But Aaron felt the flicker of hope rekindled in his chest. He wouldn't let the river take him. He wouldn't let it consume his memories. With one final push, they surged forward, breaking free from the grip of the darkness as they reached the bank. Gasping for air, Aaron scrambled out of the water, the wet ground cold beneath him. Sam and Tara followed, their faces pale with fear as they collapsed on the shore, panting heavily. They looked back at the river, which now appeared deceptively calm, the whispers fading into an eerie silence. Aaron's heart raced as he stared into the depths, knowing that the shadows still lurked beneath the surface, watching, waiting for the moment to strike again. As they caught their breath, Aaron realized that the battle was far from over. The river had awakened something within him, a darkness that he could no longer ignore. And as he looked at his friends, he knew that they had entered a realm of danger from which they might never return. Chapter 5. The Murmurs. Beneath the moon hung high above the Shenandoah River, casting a pale light that shimmered across the water's surface like scattered silver coins. The night air was thick and heavy, infused with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, as the forest around them transformed into an ominous silhouette. As the trio floated down the river, a chilling stillness settled, one that felt almost alive, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. Aaron paddled softly, glancing nervously at the dark shadows lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight. The vibrant laughter that had filled the air earlier now faded into an unsettling quiet. The whispers began to rise from the depths of the river, soft and insidious, as if the water itself was alive with secrets begging to be unveiled. "Help us! Help us!" The voices drifted through the night, entwining with the current, wrapping around Aaron's mind like a ghostly caress. He shivered involuntarily, gripping the sides of his tube tighter. The whispers felt familiar, evoking memories he had tried desperately to bury. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely breaking the eerie silence. "Hear what?" Tara replied, oblivious as she lounged in her tube, the playful smile on her face fading as she sensed the tension radiating from Aaron. "The voices in the water. They're calling for help." His words hung in the air, filled with a desperation that made his heart race. "Just the wind, Aaron. Sam said, his tone dismissive. You're overthinking it. We're here to have fun, remember? But as they continued to drift downstream, the whispers grew louder, echoing through the trees and swirling around him like tendrils of mist. The shadows on the riverbank stretched longer, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to beckon him closer, their forms shifting and writhing with the water's flow. Aaron turned his gaze back to the river, the water glistening under the moonlight. But beneath that surface, he felt something darker lurking, a malevolent force waiting for the right moment to strike. Memories of his sister's laughter mingled with the cries for help, and he felt a heaviness settle over him, an awareness of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. The current pulled them further downstream, the trees growing denser and the shadows more pronounced. As the night deepened, an unsettling chill crept into the air, causing goosebumps to rise on Aaron's skin. He glanced at his friends who were laughing and joking, blissfully unaware of the growing darkness surrounding them. He envied their carefree nature, wishing he could escape the weight of the past. Let's stop for a bit, Aaron suggested, attempting to mask the tremor in his voice. I need a break from the water. Sam frowned, clearly disinterested in halting their adventure. Come on, man. It's the best part. You can't let your fears hold you back. No, seriously, Aaron insisted, urgency creeping into his tone. I think it's better if we take a moment. With a reluctant sigh, Sam nodded. Fine, let's pull over. They found a narrow section of the bank where they could climb out, and as they pulled their tubes onto the shore, the air felt thick with anticipation, as if the river itself was watching, waiting for their next move. Once on land, Aaron moved away from the water's edge, needing distance from the whispers that seemed to cling to him like a persistent fog. He leaned against a tree, its bark rough against his back, and tried to steady his racing heart. But the quiet was deceptive. The river continued to murmur, the soft gurgling of the current now sounding more like the voices of the lost, their cries weaving into a tapestry of despair. He could hear them clearly now, the echoes of their sorrow rising from the depths. Help us! You left us! Aaron squeezed his eyes shut, desperately trying to block out the voices that tore at his mind. But the darkness had a way of seeping in, twisting his memories into something unrecognizable. Images of Emily flashed through his mind, her laughter silenced by the rush of water, her outstretched hand grasping for something, anything, as she disappeared beneath the surface. Hey, you okay? Tara's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back from the precipice of despair. Yeah, just thinking. He forced a smile, but it felt hollow. You sure? You've been quiet since we got here, she pressed, concern etching her features. I'm fine, really. Just... the river gives me the creeps, I guess. Don't let it get to you, Sam chimed in, trying to lighten the mood. It's just water. What's the worst that could happen? Aaron's throat tightened, and he turned his gaze toward the river, where shadows danced on the surface, flickering like candles about to be snuffed out. He knew what could happen. The river was a cruel mistress, holding secrets that would tear apart anyone who dared to venture too close. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted again, a palpable tension rippling through the air. The whispers grew louder, echoing in his ears as if the river were calling for him specifically. Join us! Join us! His heart raced as he glanced at his friends, who were oblivious to the dark presence enveloping them. He felt the weight of the shadows closing in, suffocating him in their grip. The reality of his situation began to sink in. He was trapped in a web of guilt and fear, and the river was hungry. Without warning, a rush of wind swept through the trees, sending a shiver down his spine. The laughter of his friends faded, replaced by the wailing of distant voices that clawed at his sanity. Help us! You cannot escape! Panic surged within him as he stumbled back from the water's edge, the darkness pressing closer. We need to go. Now! He shouted, fear cracking his voice. Why? What's wrong? Tara asked, her expression turning serious. There's something wrong with the river. It's alive! Sam rolled his eyes, attempting to downplay Aaron's mounting dread. It's just your imagination. You're letting the old man's stories get to you. But Aaron shook his head vigorously, desperation clawing at his throat. No, you don't understand. The river... The ground trembled beneath them, and the shadows danced more erratically as if mocking him. The water surged forward, rising with an unnatural force that sent a wave crashing against the bank. "Guys, get back!" Aaron yelled, fear coursing through him. In an instant, the river erupted, dark figures surfacing in the water, their ghostly forms shimmering in the moonlight. The spectral shapes were twisted and grotesque, their mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide with terror. "Help us! Help us!" they wailed, their voices a chilling symphony of despair that echoed through the night. Aaron stumbled back, his heart racing as he grasped Tara's arm. "We have to leave, now!" But as he turned to run, the shadows surged, enveloping them in darkness, the whispers rising to a fevered pitch. The river roared, its surface churning violently as the spirits clawed their way toward the bank, desperate to reclaim their lost souls. Terror consumed him as he realized the truth. The river was alive, and it craved something far more sinister than just their presence. It sought their fears, their guilt, and it wouldn't let them escape. "Run!" he shouted, pulling Tara and Sam away from the water, but the shadows closed in, wrapping around their ankles like chains. The air thickened, and the whispers transformed into a cacophony of rage, the voices growing louder and more frantic. "Join us! You cannot escape!" With every ounce of strength, Aaron fought against the tide of shadows that threatened to drag them under. He could feel the weight of the spirits, their grief pressing against him, their desperation clawing at his heart. As they struggled, Aaron caught a glimpse of Emily's face among the swirling shadows, her eyes filled with pain and sorrow. He felt a pang of anguish, the memories flooding back, and he realized he could not let this happen. Not to her, not to them. "Emily!" he cried out, fighting against the current. "I won't let you take me. I won't let you take them." With a final push, they broke free from the grip of the shadows, scrambling back up the bank, breathless and terrified. As they stumbled away from the river's edge, the darkness recoiled, retreating back into the depths. But even as they escaped, the whispers lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the darkness that awaited them just beneath the surface. The river was alive, and it would not rest until it claimed what it believed was its own. The trio stood panting on the bank, the realization dawning upon them that they had ventured into a realm of horror from which they might never return. The shadows were watching, waiting for the moment when fear would overpower them, and the river would reclaim its toll. Chapter 6. Confrontation with the Wraith. The night air hung heavy with dread as Aaron, Tara, and Sam huddled by the flickering campfire, the flames casting eerie shadows that danced against the trees. The crackling fire offered little comfort as darkness enveloped the campsite, the river murmuring ominously just beyond their sight. It felt as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold. Aaron's heart raced as he stared into the flames, the flickering light illuminating the growing unease in his friends' faces. He could still hear the whispers echoing in his mind, haunting him, their soft pleas mingling with the wind. "Help us! Help us!" "Maybe we should get some sleep," Tara suggested, her voice shaky, betraying her own anxiety. "We can tackle the river in the morning when it's light out." "Sleep?" Aaron echoed, glancing nervously toward the inky darkness beyond the firelight. "I don't think I can close my eyes after what we saw back there." "Quit being such a baby, Aaron," Sam said with a forced laugh, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're letting the old man's stories get to your head. There's nothing out there but trees and water." But Aaron could feel it. The weight of the darkness pressing against them. The sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes were lurking just beyond the reach of the fire's light. He knew they had ventured into dangerous territory, and the river held secrets that it was eager to unveil. As the hours wore on, the laughter from earlier faded into a tense silence. The crickets that had chirped merrily at dusk were now eerily absent, the forest enveloped in a suffocating stillness. The atmosphere thickened, a palpable tension hanging in the air as shadows crept closer to the campfire, the warmth of the flames unable to penetrate the chill that settled around them. "I'm going to check the river," Aaron finally said, his voice trembling slightly. "I need to see for myself if there's something wrong." "Are you out of your mind?" Tara exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "It's pitch black out there. What if something's waiting for you?" "I'll be fine," Aaron insisted, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I just need to know. We all heard those voices." "Great idea, buddy," Sam muttered sarcastically, but the edge in his voice betrayed his own unease. "If you're going to go, at least take a flashlight." Aaron nodded, grabbing the flashlight and stepping away from the fire. The darkness enveloped him like a heavy cloak as he walked toward the riverbank, the shadows creeping along the edges of his vision. The murmur of the water grew louder, a chilling chorus that seemed to whisper secrets from beyond. As he approached the water's edge, the beam of the flashlight danced over the surface, illuminating the rippling shadows that shifted beneath the moonlight. The current flowed steadily, but the water seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, almost as if it were breathing. "Help us!" The whispers rose again, piercing through the night, and Aaron felt his heart race. He stood frozen for a moment, fear wrapping around him like a serpent coiling tighter. What if the stories were true? What if the river really was alive, and the spirits trapped within were searching for someone to claim? Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself, forcing himself to step closer to the water. The flashlight beam flickered, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw something moving just beneath the surface. A dark shape, undulating like a serpent. "Emily," he whispered, the name slipping from his lips before he could stop it. The river's whispers morphed into a chilling wail, echoing through the night. He strained to listen, the water bubbling and gurgling, and for a moment he felt her presence, a fleeting warmth against the coldness of the river. "Aaron!" Tara called out, her voice trembling as she stepped closer, concern etched across her face. "Get away from there! It's not safe." But it was too late. The current surged suddenly, and the water erupted, a dark shape rising from the depths. The river wraith emerged, a ghastly figure with fluid limbs and an ethereal glow that illuminated its grotesque features. Its face was a twisted mask of anguish, eyes hollow and hungry, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. "Aaron!" the wraith hissed, the voice a haunting echo that resonated deep within his soul. "You have come to join us!" Aaron stumbled back, terror flooding his veins as he tried to comprehend the horror before him. "No, I'm not here to join anyone," he shouted, though the sound felt small and insignificant against the raging current. The wraith swirled closer, the water churning violently around it, and the whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of voices. "Help us! Help us!" He could feel the weight of despair pressing down on him, an overwhelming tide of fear and sorrow. The spectre reached out a ghostly hand, and Aaron felt an icy grip close around his heart, squeezing tighter as it pulled him closer to the water. "No!" he screamed, summoning every ounce of strength. "I won't let you take me!" With a surge of adrenaline, he turned and ran back toward the bank, panic coursing through him. Tara and Sam rushed forward, their eyes wide with fear as they realized the danger that lurked in the shadows. "What the hell is that?" Sam shouted, fear etching lines across his face. "It's the wraith!" Aaron yelled, scrambling to pull himself away from the water's edge. "We have to get out of here!" But the river roared in response, the shadows rising in a tumultuous wave, the wraith following close behind. It loomed over them, a figure of pure darkness, and Aaron felt the chill of its presence seeping into his bones. "Join us," it whispered, its voice a siren call that echoed in his mind, promising solace in exchange for surrender. "Fight it!" Tara yelled, her voice cutting through the haze of fear that threatened to consume them. "Don't let it get to you!" With every ounce of willpower, Aaron fought against the pull of the wraith, drawing strength from the memories of his sister, from the love they had shared. He wouldn't let this darkness claim him. He wouldn't allow it to steal the last remnants of her memory. In that moment, the wraith faltered, its form flickering as Aaron and his friends moved further back from the water's edge. The whispers began to fade, their cries for help mingling with the sound of the river, blending into a mournful dirge. But just as they thought they were free, the wraith lunged forward, a writhing mass of shadows that reached for them with icy fingers. Panic surged anew as Aaron pushed Tara and Sam away, shouting, "Get to the trees! Go!" With one last desperate glance at the river, he turned and sprinted into the dark forest, the shadows trailing behind him like a storm. The darkness was relentless, whispering promises of despair, but he could feel the bond with his friends anchoring him to the light. "Don't look back," he shouted, urgency flooding his voice as they ran deeper into the woods, the wraith's presence fading behind them. The night was filled with the sound of their pounding hearts and heavy breaths, and the realization hit him that they had only just begun to confront the darkness that awaited them. The forest closed in around them, the trees standing tall like watchful guardians. But Aaron knew that the river was still out there, waiting for the moment when their fear would pull them back into its depths. The battle was far from over, and as they fled into the night, he could feel the whispers of the river still echoing in his ears, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lay just beneath the surface. Chapter 7. The Swirling Darkness. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, as Aaron, Tara, and Sam stumbled through the dense underbrush, their hearts pounding in unison. The chilling whispers of the wraith echoed in their minds, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the reach of the firelight. Each rustle of leaves and snap of a twig sent shivers down Aaron's spine, a primal instinct urging him to flee further into the depths of the woods. "Where are we going?" Tara gasped, glancing back toward the river, the fear etched across her face. "We need to get back to the camp." "No," Aaron insisted, his voice strained with urgency. "We can't go back there, not until we know it's safe." He felt the weight of the shadows pressing in on them, a suffocating presence that seemed to thrive on their fear. As they pressed deeper into the forest, the moonlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy overhead. The air grew colder, wrapping around them like icy fingers, and a heavy silence descended, broken only by their ragged breathing. Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were alive, the trees leaning closer as if they were drawn in by the energy of their fear. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence, a sound so primal and filled with anguish that it made Aaron's blood run cold. He froze, heart racing as the echoes of the scream faded into the night. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, dread pooling in his stomach. "Yeah, I heard it," Sam replied, eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Before Aaron could answer, the shadows around them shifted, swirling as if stirred by an unseen wind. A cold breeze rushed through the trees, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of damp earth and decay. The whispers returned, rising like a crescendo from the depths of the forest, weaving through the branches and wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. "Join us! Help us!" Tara clutched Aaron's arm, her grip tightening as she looked around, her face pale. "We need to get out of here! This isn't right!" Aaron nodded, the urgency of the situation fueling him forward. But just as they turned to run, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette of twisted limbs and hollow eyes, the very embodiment of the wraith. It loomed in front of them, its presence palpable, suffocating, blocking their path with an aura of dread. "No!" Aaron shouted, panic surging through him. "We have to go!" The wraith's voice echoed, a ghastly whisper that cut through the air like a knife. "You cannot escape your fate!" Tara screamed, and Sam stumbled backward, falling to the forest floor. "Aaron!" Sam shouted, his voice trembling with fear. With every ounce of willpower, Aaron grabbed Tara's hand and yanked her back, pulling them away from the darkness that threatened to consume them. But the wraith followed, its shadowy form flickering as if fueled by their fear, its eyes burning with a hunger that chilled Aaron to the core. "Run!" Aaron yelled, his voice hoarse as they turned and sprinted through the underbrush, the forest closing in around them. Branches snagged at their clothes, clawing at their skin, as they pushed deeper into the night, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the trees, intertwining with the rustling leaves. "You cannot escape!" Aaron could feel the weight of the wraith's presence behind them, its icy fingers brushing against the nape of his neck, sending a jolt of terror racing through him. He glanced back over his shoulder, catching a glimpse of the dark figure trailing them, moving with an unnatural speed, its form shifting and morphing with every step. "Faster!" he shouted, pushing himself harder, desperation fueling his every movement. The darkness seemed to stretch, wrapping around him like a noose, tightening with each heartbeat. Suddenly, Tara tripped, falling to the forest floor with a gasp. "Aaron, help me!" she cried, panic etched across her face as she scrambled to get back up. Aaron skidded to a halt, heart pounding as he turned back to her. "Get up! We have to go!" But the wraith was upon them, its presence overwhelming, the whispers now a deafening roar. Aaron could feel the pull of the darkness, a magnetic force that threatened to drag them into the abyss. He reached out, grasping Tara's hand as she struggled to rise. "Come on," he urged, pulling her to her feet just as the wraith lunged forward, a shadowy arm reaching out toward them. In that instant, time seemed to slow. Aaron could feel the cold breath of the wraith on his skin, the weight of its gaze penetrating his very soul. He knew they were standing on the precipice of something terrible, and if they didn't act quickly, they would be swallowed by the darkness. With a burst of strength, he yanked Tara toward him, and together they stumbled backward, breaking free from the wraith's grasp. But just as they turned to run, a chilling voice rang out from the darkness, echoing with an unearthly resonance. "You cannot escape your fate, Aaron!" His heart raced as he pushed through the underbrush, the trees closing in around them. The forest felt alive, twisting and shifting, a labyrinth of darkness designed to ensnare them. Every turn led deeper into the shadows, the whispers now a chaotic symphony of despair. Tara's breath came in sharp gasps beside him, her eyes wide with fear. "What does it want? What does it want from us?" "I don't know," Aaron shouted back, his voice hoarse. "But we can't let it take us." The path ahead twisted like a serpent, the darkness closing in, and he could feel the weight of despair pressing against him. The forest was alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy, and the wraith's laughter echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that promised eternal suffering. Suddenly, they stumbled into a clearing bathed in moonlight, the glow illuminating the trees surrounding them like spectral guardians. But even in the light, the darkness lingered, a palpable presence that clawed at the edges of their sanity. "Where do we go?" Tara gasped, scanning the clearing for an escape. But the shadows lurked at the edges, whispering secrets that sent chills racing down her spine. Aaron felt the ground tremble beneath him, a low rumble that reverberated through the air, and he realized with dawning horror that the river was angry. The whispers had transformed into a deafening roar, a torrent of voices that filled the clearing, drowning out all rational thought. "Join us! Join us!" He turned back toward the river, and for a brief moment, he could see the shape of the wraith rising from the water, its form twisting and writhing as it beckoned them closer. The shadows danced around them, encircling the clearing, and Aaron's heart sank as he realized there was no escape. "Run!" he shouted again, the urgency in his voice rising as the shadows surged forward. The wraith lunged, its dark form reaching out with tendrils of darkness, eager to reclaim what it believed was its. With one final push, Aaron grabbed Tara's hand, and together they sprinted toward the trees, the light of the moon a fleeting refuge. But as they entered the shadows, the darkness wrapped around them, a suffocating presence that threatened to pull them under. They ran deeper into the forest, the whispers still chasing them, the cries for help echoing through the night. And just when Aaron thought they might escape, the wraith's voice boomed behind them, a chilling reminder that the darkness would not let them go easily. "You will join us," it whispered, a sinister promise that hung in the air like a noose, tightening around their hearts as they plunged into the night, desperate to break free from the horrors that awaited them in the depths of the river. Chapter 8. Down to the Depths. The forest closed in around Aaron, Tara, and Sam like a suffocating embrace, shadows twisting and warping as they navigated through the underbrush. The whispers of the wraith echoed in their ears, the insistent calls for help blending into a cacophony of voices that clawed at their sanity. "Join us! Help us!" As they stumbled through the darkness, the atmosphere thickened, the air charged with an unholy energy that made the hairs on the back of Aaron's neck stand on end. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent jolts of panic through him, a visceral reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the veil of shadows. "Where are we even going?" Tara panted, glancing nervously over her shoulder as if expecting the wraith to emerge from the darkness at any moment. "I don't know," Aaron replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "We just need to put as much distance between us and the river as possible." But even as he spoke, a sense of dread settled over him like a shroud. The further they ventured into the woods, the more he felt the oppressive weight of the darkness closing in. It was as if the very trees were leaning closer, their branches twisted into grotesque shapes, whispering secrets that made his skin crawl. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the air, reverberating beneath their feet. Aaron froze, his heart pounding as the ground trembled, a warning sign that sent fear coursing through his veins. "Did you feel that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Sam said, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" Before anyone could respond, the whispers rose again, the chorus of voices swirling around them, tugging at the edges of their minds. "Help us! Join us!" The cries seemed to rise from the very earth, a mournful lament that clawed at Aaron's heart, echoing the guilt he had carried for so long. Without warning, the ground beneath them shifted, and the shadows surged forward, coiling around Aaron's legs like a serpent. He stumbled, panic surging within him as he fought against the darkness. "No! Get back!" he shouted, trying to pull away. But the shadows tightened their grip, dragging him toward the ground. Tara reached out, grabbing his arm. "Aaron! Hold on!" But as she pulled him back, the shadows twisted and morphed, dragging him deeper into the earth, the voices growing louder, drowning out all rational thought. "You cannot escape your fate!" With a surge of adrenaline, Aaron fought against the darkness, desperation fueling his every move. "I won't let you take me," he shouted, forcing himself to remember Emily's laughter, the warmth of her spirit that had been taken from him. With one final effort, he broke free from the shadows, stumbling forward as he gasped for breath. The darkness recoiled momentarily, but he knew it wouldn't relent for long. They had ventured too close to the river, too close to the heart of the Wraith's power. "Keep moving," he urged, pulling Tara and Sam along with him. They stumbled deeper into the woods, the shadows trailing behind them like a vengeful spirit, hungry for their despair. As they ran, Aaron caught glimpses of movement in the periphery, dark shapes darting between the trees, the eyes of the lost watching them with an unsettling intensity. Each flicker of movement sent fresh waves of terror coursing through him, amplifying the fear that had settled deep within. They finally broke through the dense underbrush and stumbled into a small clearing, moonlight spilling over them like a protective blanket. For a moment, they stood panting, hearts racing as they glanced back toward the shadows that lingered just beyond the trees. "Are we safe?" Tara gasped, her eyes darting around the clearing, searching for any signs of danger. "I don't know," Aaron admitted, his voice trembling. "But we can't let our guard down." As they caught their breath, the whispers began to fade, replaced by an eerie stillness that settled over the clearing. It was an unsettling quiet, one that made the hairs on the back of Aaron's neck stand on end. The shadows lingered at the edge of the trees, watching, waiting, and he felt the oppressive weight of their presence pressing down on him. "What now?" Sam asked, his voice low. "We need to figure out how to get back to the camp and away from the river," Aaron replied, desperation creeping into his tone. "The Wraith won't let us go easily. We need to find a way to confront it." "Confront it? Are you insane?" Tara exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "It almost took you down back there." "We can't keep running," Aaron insisted, fighting to maintain his resolve. "If we don't face it, it will keep coming for us." As he spoke, the shadows flickered at the edges of the clearing, swirling like dark smoke, and the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. "Help us! Join us!" The voices began to crescendo, rising into a deafening roar that filled the air with anguish. The shadows surged forward, an overwhelming wave of darkness that threatened to consume them. Aaron felt the ground tremble again, the shadows pulling at his legs, wrapping around him like chains. "Get back!" he shouted, desperately clawing at the ground as he fought against the weight of the darkness. "We have to break free!" But just as he felt himself slipping beneath the weight of despair, a surge of energy coursed through him, a flicker of hope ignited by the memories of Emily. He couldn't let the darkness claim him. With one final push, he fought against the shadows, pulling Tara and Sam along with him. The clearing began to pulse with a strange energy, the trees swaying as if the forest itself were alive. And for a moment, he felt the weight of the Wraith's power begin to dissipate. The whispers grew frantic, the cries for help mingling with the sound of rushing water. "You cannot escape," they echoed, but Aaron pressed forward, determined to confront the darkness that had haunted him for so long. With renewed resolve, they broke free from the clearing, sprinting deeper into the woods as the shadows clawed at their heels. They could feel the river's pull, the hunger of the Wraith lurking just beyond the trees, but they wouldn't let it take them. Not now. As they ran, the world around them began to shift, the trees closing in, the darkness thickening. But Aaron knew they had to fight. They had to confront the wraith before it consumed them whole. With the sound of the river roaring in the distance, Aaron felt a surge of determination. They would face the darkness together, united against the malevolent force that sought to claim them. And as they plunged deeper into the night, he could feel the shadows recoiling, retreating before the strength of their resolve. They were not lost yet, not while they still fought. Chapter 9. The Struggle for Survival. The forest loomed around Aaron, Tara, and Sam, a dark and twisted maze that felt both familiar and foreign. Each step they took deeper into the woods sent waves of dread coursing through them, shadows slithering along the ground like serpents, eager to ensnare them in their cold embrace. The sounds of the river roared in the distance, a menacing reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the trees, waiting to claim them. The air was thick with tension as they navigated the underbrush, the moonlight struggling to pierce through the dense canopy overhead. Aaron could feel the whispers rising again, echoing through the night, wrapping around him like tendrils of fog. "You cannot escape. Join us." The voices clawed at his sanity, tugging at the edges of his consciousness as they ventured deeper into the heart of darkness. He could see the fear etched on Tara's face, her eyes wide with terror, while Sam walked slightly behind them, his brow furrowed with anxiety. "Are we even going in the right direction?" Sam muttered, glancing back at the dark path behind them. "I don't know," Aaron replied, his voice strained. "We just need to keep moving away from the river." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble vibrating through the earth like a warning bell. Panic surged within Aaron as he stumbled, grabbing onto a nearby tree to steady himself. The shadows around them seemed to pulse, the whispers rising to a fevered pitch, their chilling chorus growing louder and more insistent. "Help us! Help us!" "Make it stop!" Tara shouted, pressing her hands against her ears as if to block out the haunting cries that echoed through the woods. Aaron felt his heart race, the weight of despair settling in his chest. They were not alone, and the forest knew their fears, knew the darkness that lingered just beneath the surface. The river was hungry, and they had wandered too close to its depths. "Listen," Aaron shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "We have to confront it. We can't let it take us." But before he could finish, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around them like a noose. The wraith materialized from the darkness, a swirling mass of shadows and despair, its hollow eyes burning with a hunger that chilled Aaron to the bone. "Join us!" it hissed, the voice echoing with the weight of 1,000 lost souls. "No!" Aaron screamed, fighting against the shadows that clawed at his limbs. He could feel the icy grip of despair closing in around him, threatening to pull him into the abyss. "Run!" he shouted, yanking Tara and Sam back as he fought against the encroaching darkness. The wraith lunged, its spectral form extending like a dark cloud, and in that moment, Aaron felt the weight of his fear and guilt pressing down upon him, threatening to consume him whole. They stumbled backward, fleeing deeper into the woods, the underbrush clawing at their legs as they fought against the tide of shadows. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a storm, and Aaron could feel the weight of their despair wrapping around him like chains. "Where do we go?" Sam gasped, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "We can't keep running forever." Aaron's heart raced as he scanned the dark trees for a way out, desperation flooding his senses. "We have to find a way to fight back. There has to be something we can do." As they turned to run again, the ground beneath them trembled once more, and the darkness surged forward, the wraith's laughter echoing through the trees. It sounded like 1,000 mournful voices, twisted and tormented, clawing at their sanity. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, the desperation in their voices breaking through Aaron's resolve. In that moment, he remembered the old man's warning, the tales of the river's darkness. The wraith fed on fear, on guilt, and it thrived on the despair that clung to their hearts. They had to confront it, to face their own demons before it consumed them whole. "We can't let it take us," Aaron shouted, his voice filled with determination. "We have to stand together!" But just as he spoke, the shadows lunged forward, swirling around them in a chaotic frenzy. The wraith's form materialized, its hollow eyes boring into Aaron's soul, and he felt the weight of his past crashing down upon him. Memories of Emily flooded his mind, the guilt overwhelming as he relived that fateful day, her laughter, her pleas for help, the moment he had failed her. "No, I won't let you take me," he shouted, defiance surging within him. He had to confront the truth, to face the darkness that had haunted him for so long. The wraith hesitated, its form flickering as Aaron summoned the strength of his memories. He could feel the warmth of Emily's spirit, her laughter intertwining with the shadows, pushing back against the darkness. "I'm sorry," he shouted, tears streaming down his face. "I should have saved you!" With every ounce of courage, he fought against the shadows, calling out to Tara and Sam. "We can't let it take us. We need to remember what we've lost." The wraith recoiled, the shadows twisting in on themselves as the echoes of despair faded. Aaron could feel the light of his memories pushing back against the darkness, a flicker of hope igniting within him. "Hold on to your light," Tara yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. "Remember why we're fighting." With renewed strength they stood together, arms linked as they faced the wraith, the darkness swirling around them like a storm. They could feel the pull of the river, the weight of despair pressing down, but they refused to let it claim them. "No!" Aaron shouted, his voice ringing out with conviction. "You will not take us. We are stronger than you." In that moment the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of anguished cries that filled the air. But the light within them surged, pushing back against the darkness. The wraith flickered, its form wavering as the whispers faded, and for the first time, they felt the weight of the shadows lift. With one final push, they broke free from the grasp of the wraith, tumbling back into the embrace of the forest. The whispers grew faint, the cries for help dissolving into the night, and they stumbled forward, breathless and alive. But even as they escaped, the darkness lingered at the edges of their vision, a haunting reminder of the battle they had faced. The river still roared in the distance, and Aaron knew the wraith was not defeated. It would return, hungering for their fears, waiting for the moment they would falter. "Are we safe?" Sam panted, his eyes wide with terror as they caught their breath. "For now," Aaron replied, but the weight of the darkness still clung to him, a lingering presence that reminded him they were not free yet. As they gathered themselves, they knew one thing for certain: the struggle was far from over. The wraith would continue to haunt them, its shadows lurking in the depths of the river, waiting for the chance to reclaim what it believed was rightfully its. And they had to be ready to confront it again, to face the darkness that threatened to consume them whole. Chapter 10. Embracing the Light. The forest was eerily quiet as Aaron, Tara, and Sam stumbled deeper into the woods, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the twisted branches and gnarled roots that lined their path. Despite their escape from the wraith, the weight of its presence lingered in the air, a thick fog of dread that clung to their skin like a second layer. "Are we safe now?" Tara whispered, her voice trembling as she glanced nervously over her shoulder. The shadows loomed large behind them, shifting and twisting as if still alive, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "For now," Aaron replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But even as he spoke, a chill ran down his spine. The whispers from the river had not faded completely. They still echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of their reality. "Join us. Help us." The calls rose and fell like the tide, relentless in their desperation. They trudged through the underbrush, the ground uneven beneath their feet, each step filled with uncertainty. Aaron could feel the heaviness of the air pressing down on him, a palpable reminder of the battle they had faced against the wraith. He could still see its hollow eyes, still hear the anguished cries of the lost souls trapped beneath the river's surface. The weight of his sister's memory hung heavy on his heart, a sorrow that refused to be forgotten. "We need to find a way back to the campsite," Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't stay out here forever." "Agreed," Aaron replied, glancing up at the sky. The moon was shrouded by clouds, and he felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. As if the very universe conspired against them, the forest felt alive, and with every creak of a branch or rustle of leaves, he could sense the darkness stirring. As they pushed forward, the trees began to close in around them, creating a canopy that blocked out the remaining light. The shadows thickened, swirling around them like smoke, and Aaron felt a deep sense of foreboding settle in the pit of his stomach. "Stay close," he warned, glancing at Tara and Sam, who stood too far apart for comfort. The darkness felt suffocating, and he could almost see the shadows slithering at the edges of his vision, eager to draw them back into their cold embrace. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, a low rumble that vibrated through the earth like a warning bell. Aaron froze, heart pounding as the whispers returned, rising in a frantic chorus that filled the air. "Help us! Help us!" "No, not again!" Tara screamed, panic flooding her voice. "We have to run!" But the darkness surged forward, the shadows coiling around them like tendrils, pulling them toward the depths of despair. The Wraith emerged from the depths of the darkness, a swirling mass of shadows and anguish that twisted and writhed with an unholy energy. "You cannot escape your fate!" it roared, the voice a chilling echo that resonated through the trees, causing Aaron's heart to race. "Fight it!" Aaron shouted, clutching Tara's hand tightly as he tried to pull them back. The shadows wrapped around him, tugging at his limbs, but he refused to let them take him. "We have to confront it," he urged, his voice rising above the chaos. "Remember what we faced before. We can't let it take us again." The Wraith lunged forward, its hollow eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. Aaron could feel the cold grip of despair closing in, but he fought back with every ounce of strength he had. He could feel the memories of Emily, her laughter and warmth flooding his mind. She wouldn't want him to give in. She would want him to fight. "Emily!" he cried out, desperation lacing his voice. "I won't let it take me. I will remember you." In that moment, a surge of light flickered within him, pushing back against the shadows that threatened to engulf them. The darkness recoiled, momentarily caught off guard, and Aaron seized the opportunity. "Together!" he shouted, turning to Tara and Sam. "We have to stand together. We can do this." As they clasped hands, an energy pulsed between them, a light that cut through the suffocating darkness. The shadows shrieked in agony, their whispers rising to a fevered pitch as the bond between them grew stronger. "Join us!" the Wraith howled, but the strength of their resolve pushed back against the tide of despair. "Never!" Aaron shouted, feeling the warmth of their friendship bolstering his spirit. "We are not afraid of you." With a final push, they surged forward, the light within them igniting like a beacon in the night. The Wraith writhed in fury, its form flickering as they fought against the darkness. The forest trembled around them, the air charged with energy as the battle raged on. The whispers grew frantic, a chaotic blend of anguished cries and desperate pleas that filled the air. But Aaron refused to listen. He focused on the light, on the bond that held them together. "Remember who you are," he urged Tara and Sam, their hands tightly clasped together. "We are stronger than this." With one final burst of energy, they unleashed their light upon the darkness, a blinding radiance that pierced through the shadows. The Wraith let out a blood-curdling scream, the sound echoing through the trees as it writhed in pain. And then, silence. The darkness recoiled, pulling away like a tide retreating from the shore, the whispers fading into a distant memory. Aaron opened his eyes, heart racing as he took in the sight before him. The forest was quiet, the shadows dissipating like smoke, leaving behind only the cool glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight that had clung to him for so long finally lifting. "We did it," Tara whispered, her voice trembling as she looked around in disbelief. "Yeah," Sam replied, awe etched across his face. "We actually did it." But even as they celebrated their victory, Aaron felt a sense of unease settle in his chest. The river still flowed nearby, its dark waters holding secrets that would not easily be forgotten. The Wraith may have been banished for now, but he knew it would return, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when fear would grip their hearts again. "Let's get back to the camp," Aaron said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that lingered. "We need to regroup and figure out what to do next." As they made their way back, the shadows retreated, and the whispers faded, but Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was not truly gone. It lingered just below the surface, an ever-present reminder of the battle they had fought and the war that was far from over. But as they emerged into the clearing where their camp lay, Aaron felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced the darkness and survived, and together they would continue to fight against the forces that sought to claim them. They would embrace the light, no matter how daunting the shadows that loomed in the distance.